Talk about his experience in World War II, and that would be about what, early 1940s,
right.
1944 possibly. Okay.
Okay.
Let's welcome him.
I guess you can see that here's my alma mater. I graduated here in 1940. There were 28 boys and 28 girls in my class. The Lititz used to be a very, very little community. We only had one policeman, and the policeman we had, he never drove a car. So anyhow, I graduated in 1940, and as soon as I was out of high school, I got a job. The first day I was out of high school, I got a job. And then that worked to keep playing. We helped to build homes. I built the frames and the shutters of a home. And then they came the next year. That was 1941, and I was doing fine. About the middle of 1941, I got a letter from Uncle Sam, from the President of the United States, and he welcomed me to join the Army, one of the branches of the service. He said, you can pick any branch you want, the Army, the Navy, the Marines, or the Coast Guard. Well, I thought, I'm not going to go until I have to go, so I waited until they drafted me. The last day of September, well, I had a girlfriend by that time, and I said to my girlfriend, I said, did you want to wait for me, or shall we get married? She said, that's up to you. So we went down to Maryland and we got married. 2.5 months later, I was on my way in the Army. I left, we took buses, and he took us to Ephrata. We got the trolley car in Ephrata. We went up to New Cumberland, Pennsylvania, outside of Harrisburg, and he gave us a uniform. The next day, we were on our way to an Army camp. We had no idea where we were going, but we wound up in Oklahoma. A brand new camp they just built there, named Camp Gruber. It was way out in the Indian Territory. All around this camp is full of Indians. But there, I was there for a year, and I took basic training, and I was there for 6 more months. In other words, we took our training for a year and a half. What we did was something the Army never tried before. We were an observation battalion. We were supposed to go in the front line, and we were supposed to know where the enemy was at all times. And what happened, finally I got a furlough to come home. I had a 5-day furlough, and I came home, and I was on my way back to camp. We went through Indiana, and in Indiana there was a town that always gave the troops, we were in a big troop train, coffee and donuts and something to eat. So we stopped, and there was a boy selling newspapers. He said, Americans land in Allied France. We thought, oh boy, the war's over for us. We won't see any war anyhow. So what happened, I got back to camp, and there was nobody there. My barracks was altogether empty, but there were 2 MPs there. They said, we're waiting on you. I said, what do you mean? They said, we're down to the station. We're ready to go. So I have to get my equipment. I said, my rifle and everything is here. They said, we have everything packed for you. We're down to the station. I went down to the station. The band was playing. We got on the train. We took off. We went up through, whole way up through the northern United States, up through Detroit. We wound up into Canada. We crossed the Canadian port. The whole way across Canada, down into West Point. We went down to Camp Shanks, New York. That was the port of embarkation. So we had 2 days there in New York, and we weren't allowed to call home. Everything was hush-hush. And the next day, we took off in a big boat. There was 500 men, between 435 and 500 men in my battalion. There was 3 companies, A Company, B Company, and Headquarters Company. I happened to be in B Company. But one nice feature about it, our whole outfit was Pennsylvania. We might have had a couple fellas that were from Virginia, but that's about all. And we were all the same age. We were all 20 and 21 years old. So we got on the boat and took off from New York, and I thought, my gosh, I hope we got out in the ocean. I hope there's more, we have some kind of something with us, because if we're out there alone, a submarine will knock us off out of the war, you know. So anyhow, we went to bed that night, and we got up the next morning. There was 144 ships in our convoy. That was the biggest sight you ever saw in your life. Don't matter wherever you were, what time of the day, you and I, that ship over here was right there, and that ship was right there, and that 144 ships was all in one convoy. Well, we were on the ocean for 13 days. Finally, we saw land, and we knew that we can't be far away, but we had no idea where we were going. So as soon as our convoy turned to make a turn, the ship right beside us was torpedoed by a German submarine. The German submarine was waiting there, we found out later, for a week, waiting for our convoy. And there was an oil ship, and it blew up in 15 minutes. There was all our ship, I was in seat deck, the third deck down, and it shook. Everybody ran up the top to see what was going, but we kept right on going. And there were 85 men on that ship, and they were all drowned. So then we landed in a town named Cardiff in Wales. We got off our ship, and we were there in Cardiff for 2 days, and they talked to us, and they brought British soldiers out in German uniforms. They wanted us to get us familiar what a soldier looked like in a German uniform. So then we stayed there 2 days, and then we got on the convoy. We went down through England. We went through Bristol, Bath, Salisbury. Finally, we landed up in Southampton, England. And we crawled on a ship called an SLI. It was called Landing Craft Industry, Landing Craft Industry or something like that. Landing Craft Infantry. And we got on this ship, and when we went over to France, we landed on Omaha Beach. This was after the invasion. The Americans were right near Paris when we hit the line. We got off of that ship, the whole front end of the ship goes down, and you walked up the beach. We went up to Lane, and up there was a bunch of vehicles waiting on us. And they told us, different officers went by, they said, make sure you have a round in your chamber. In other words, make sure you have bullets in your gun. Never in the Army do you call it a gun. It's always a rifle. If you're calling it a gun, you're really, I'll tell you, you get a lot of work. So anyhow, they put us in these vehicles. We went through Paris, and there the people greeted us. They come out with champagnes, Calvados, and the girls would jump up on the tanks and the vehicles, and they'd squeeze you and hug you. They were 4 years under German rule. The Germans had them for 4 years. And then it started to get dark. We pulled outside of Paris. We went in a wooded area, near a wooded area, and our officer said, I guess we'll stay here for the night. And just about that time, there's 2 infantry patrols came up the road, and this one officer said to our officer, he said, Lieutenant, he said, if I was you, I wouldn't bivouac in this area. Then our lieutenant said, why? He said, well, you're right near a crossroad, and the Germans have this crossroads zeroed in. In other words, they knew where the crossroads were, and they could be 5, 10, 15 miles away with their big guns, and they could hit this crossroad right in the button. So our officer said, well, it'd be good experience for the men. So we pulled in this wood area, and he said, now you guys dig a foxhole. We had half a shovel, your spade, that little handle about this big. So 4 of us decided we're going to dig 1 foxhole. So we dug down about 12 inches. I said, I'll be darned, I'm not going to dig a foxhole. And well, there's roots underneath there, and it was raining. It rains every day on the front line. It rains. Doesn't matter if the sun's shining or what. The concussion from the big guns and the guns makes it rain. And anyhow, we started digging, and I said, I'm not digging any further. There's 4 of us crawling in this one hole. We made it about 3 feet wide. We got close together. Then about, maybe an hour and a half later, all of a sudden, I heard these shells, woo, and they started to shell us. The Germans had a shell called a tree burst. In other words, it would explode about the height of a tree. And these big pieces of shrapnel, and those shells are this big. And they're this round, you know, and when they break, they're hot and hit the ground. And I looked out, I thought it was raining, you know, or snowing, because the ground was all white. Then after a while, I heard somebody cry. Then I heard somebody holler, I'm hit, I'm hit. Then I said to this guy next to me, I said, Day, I said, we knew everybody so well. There was 100 and some in my company. We were together for a year and a half, just like all you people here together. We knew everybody. We lived with them. We knew their families and everything. And we were all buddies. We were all there for one reason, to get this war with and get home. Well, anyhow, then I went over to one guy, he was from Elizabeth at the time. He was hitting the arm, he was hitting the leg. Another guy was hitting the back with a big piece of shrapnel. Another guy was hitting the leg. And they were hurt, you know, they didn't know what to do. We were new in the line. That was our first initiation of what the war is really like. Then we had a master sergeant. He gave us our basic training. He said, he'll go for hell. And it's pitch black. You cannot use any light in the war. If you use any kind of a light at all, you're done. Everything is in the darkness. Well, anyhow, he said he's going for hell. So I said, okay, I'll stay here with him. So then I stayed there, and he didn't come back and didn't come back. Then I thought, I better go see if I can find him. So I walked up the road maybe a quarter mile. The only way I could see was when the shells burst for the light, you know. And I went up a while. Here he was standing against a tree. I said, "Did you get somebody?" He said, "I can't." I said, "Why?" He said, "I'm hit." I said, "Where are you hit?" He said, "In his arms." He wasn't hit, he was shell shocked. I said, "Well, I'll go up." And it was the 103rd Medical Battalion, our own 28th Division, had an aid station about a quarter mile away. And I went in and it was challenged. No matter where you go, you're challenged. And every day you're issued a new password. And if you don't know the password, you might as well give up. In other words, just an example, when we were captured, our password was strip and the coastline was T's. And then I knew them every day they got a new one. Well, then I got to they sent 2 Jeeps down, and there was 4 guys that were wounded pretty bad, and they put them across the hood of the Jeep. And our vehicles were completely destroyed. They just looked like someone dynamited them. But the rest of the guys were living it. And then from then on, we continued in the war. We had different locations. Well, we had outposts. We had 4 to 5 men in an outpost. In other words, just like the fingers in your hand. We had an outpost here, and then we had telephone communications that we call back to our command post. And we tell them what's going on in the front line, you know. If we see an American plane crash, or we see a German patrol, we'd call it in, and then they'd try to send help out. Well, anyhow, that went on like that, and we were in the line, we were in the line through Belgium, with Luxembourg, and Holland. And we were up in Holland, the last time we were in Holland, and I'll give you an example up there. My job was, my personal job, I had a 3/4 ton Dodge truck, and we had a swivel on top of it with a 50 caliber machine gun. It was me and the driver and the machine gunners. And no matter where we went, we had to go all 3, you couldn't go by ourselves. So anyhow, we went up there to this point, you know, and I used to have to go get, I said, "Look, how are you going to get fed?" He said, "That's your job, Sergeant." He said, "You make sure they get raw fresh water every day, and they always have food every day." We had K rations, we had C rations, and we had 10-in-1 rations. But everything was in a box. Nothing was ever cooked. We had 1 cooked meal the whole time I was in the war until the war ended. That was on Thanksgiving Day, 1944. General Eisenhower said every GI in the European Theater of Operations shall have a cooked meal for Thanksgiving. So here they send me a kitchen range, they send me 2 frozen turkeys, they send me 2 loaves of bread, and the GI bread was that hard you could throw it on the floor and it would bounce back at you, and a couple cans of vegetables, and it was raining like heck, and the turkeys came frozen, and I thought, well, how are we going to do this, you know? So I put the turkeys outside in the rain all night, and we were living at that time in a German pillbox. Now, I don't know if you know what a pillbox is. A pillbox was a big concrete building, like just something like a hut, and some of the walls were 16 foot thick, and they just had little slits for the Germans to look out. And that's where we were living at the time. So I'd go out every now and then and see nobody stole anything. So I got up about 4 o'clock in the morning and told the guard to get me up early, and I put these turkeys on this range first. I could work the range fine. So anyhow, I cooked this, and then I called the outpost. I'll tell you, it was a pathetic thing. I can still see them coming down the hill. I had to, by 1 o'clock, 1:30 in the afternoon, the turkeys were soft, or they sent me raw potatoes. I had to peel potatoes and put them in the kettle. I had 3 or 4 kettles and a range, and nothing to wash your mess kits in or nothing, just to eat. And I called the outpost. I said, "What outpost at the time?" Here they came. I can still see them to this day walking down over the hill. And I had a boy from Columbia. He was crying. I said, "What's wrong?" His name was Short Charlie Haynes. He said, "Sketch," he said, "I can't take it out there anymore." He said, "The German patrols are walking past it all the time. You don't know if they're going to throw hand grenades in them or what." So anyhow, I got them all fed. And then we went up to Holland. Then finally, I had them fed, and they went back in their outpost again. And then we all had to move. They tell you what, you're situated at a spot, and the very next day they make you move, because the front moves and you got to move with the front. And sometimes we retreat. But they say, we didn't retreat, we just moved back for strategic purposes. They didn't want you to think that you're losing a battle. And they moved up to Holland, and I'll never forget Holland. Holland was pretty rough. We took over a coal mine up there. They had a big slag pile outside for the offall, and we had an outpost on top of this slag pile. And one of my best buddies was up there directing artillery fire from top of this slag pile, and it had a conveyor that took this slag up. And he just came down off his turn up there, and he waited a while, and I said, well, here I go again. And he crawled up this slag pile, and he went up there, and the Germans threw some shells over. They couldn't hit directly, and the shells missed him when they hit the conveyor, and it split his back right over, just like if you would have taken a knife and cut him down the back. And I went up and pulled him down, and the captain said, what happened? I told him. He said, I'm going to put him in for a Silver Star. I said, what good is the Silver Star to him? I said, he's dead now. And then we were in Holland, and funny things happened up there. We dug foxholes in an orchard. And one day we were in that orchard, outside the foxhole, a little girl, just about your age, came up. And she went like this to come with her. So a couple of us said, do you think it's safe to go with her? So we decided we're going to go with her. So we walked with her, and she walked and walked. Finally, we got to home. She took us in the home, and her mother spoke perfect English. She said, I want you boys to have a good night's rest. And she took us upstairs, and she had a bed, as you say, way down in it. And that night we did have a good night's rest. And the next morning we went down in Holland. It was a farmhouse. The houses are attached to the barn. You go right outside the door, and then you're in the barn. And people all wore those wooden shoes. Those wooden shoes, and she took some milk from the cows, and she heated it for us, and she gave us fresh milk. Well, then we were up in Holland for a while, and one day the whistle blew, and here everybody congregated. We said, now what's going on? Well, they said the Germans are infiltrating our line in another sector, and we're supposed to go down and see if we can find out how many and in what force. No, it's okay.
You're okay still?
Mm-hmm. And what force? And then, I thought, oh my gosh, now what happened? So they had vehicles for us, but I kept my own vehicle. I named my vehicle Blackjack. My driver was a fiend of poker. He used to play poker, so we called it Blackjack. Well, anyhow, we got in there, and we're going down southern sector to the what they call the Ardennes. It was in